Okay, good evening, guys and girls. Coming to you live on Facebook and live on Instagram here on this Sunday Easter day, which I must say felt like today. Yeah, it didn't feel like Easter. Having said that, it's not Greek Easter. That's next week, by the way, for those that are interested. Greek Easter is this time next week. And but even the Monday public holiday thing doesn't feel like it. I mean, every day's the same now, isn't it? Like every day can actually be an inspection day. Every day you can actually do whatever you want to do on any day. The pattern has totally changed, and some of it may never return again. But of course, you couldn't do an inspection. And actually, Paul Checker told me what the name of the guy's name is. I got the name wrong. The guy's name is, in fact, Daniel Andrews. So, no, you can't do an inspection anytime. And Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, who has just again proven that you don't need to have a long neck to be a goose, decided that it was totally okay for people to go to Bunnings Hardware in masses and do a bit of a cosmetic renovation on their property, maybe pop into Calvin Klein and buy some underwear, maybe go off and do some shopping at Spotlight, buy some fabric. But he actually thought it would actually be wrong to have a buyer walk into a property on their own to look at it, and on Thursday night decided to quietly make that illegal. So to all the real estate agents there in Melbourne, I feel sorry for you, because that actually happened after you'd probably created a bunch of appointments and had moved forward on the basis that life was normal. But hey, Christina, how you going? Good to see you all. Anyway, the bottom line is, I actually, not that I follow politics that much, but I also listened to the guy after after the George Pearl verdict. And again, I'm not going to go into that, because I actually think that there's a lot of things that, George Pearl, there's a lot of question marks about his behavior overseeing the Catholic Church. But one thing that we know clearly is that in the High Court, 7-0 basically came to the conclusion that the Victorian people hadn't done a great job in the first place at actually finding him guilty and that whole setup. But I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm going to talk about just his approach. His approach there, where he brought. I don't know much about this guy, but he sounds like a bit of a control freak. And I don't like him. But anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to have a great conversation tonight, and I'm going to be talking to you about post-COVID-19. And I don't know when it's going to be. But I know that we're getting closer to it each day, because Australia, you've done a superb job, and so have the Kiwis. They've done a spectacular job, where the infection rate's been coming down and coming down and coming down. And now people are beginning to talk about what will life be like post-COVID-19. We're not out of the woods yet, but it appears that whether it's a month or 2 months or 3 months, Australia is no Italy in terms of infection and death rates. And 2-3 weeks ago, we couldn't have had this conversation with so much confidence. But guys and girls, I've done some research, and I just wanted to sort of preempt and maybe educate myself, and in turn pass on that knowledge to you on what life was going to be like post-COVID-19. And for a start, let me tell you that some of the research that I've got has been coming through from Wuhan. So Wuhan, very interesting. As soon as Wuhan eased up on their lockdown rules and people were again able to start moving around, what has actually happened is that the amount of people going off to solicitors inquiring about starting divorce proceedings has gone up 25%. So one of the hangover effects is that there will be more people separating as a result of COVID-19. And this again was, the source is Bloomberg. News, and there was one other reputable media outlet that also covered this story. And one of the reasons why, of course, that is going to happen is that when you have time off, and when you sort of press a pause button to the robotic work and life that you have when things are going normal, which is normally 48 out of 52 weeks of the year, what actually happens is people reevaluate their lives, and they are at home, and their home, particularly the fact that everyone's been home, is a bit of a mirror, and you're having a look at what your life's like. And it also, during a period like this, helps you understand the fragility of life. The fact that it can just change in an instant. And I think that those two factors, and the factor that people are starting to have some financial stress. And when you have financial stress, that magnifies problems in a relationship. It sometimes is also the cause of relationship problems, financial matters. And I see that there will be more divorces. Of course, to real estate agents listening to this, divorces are a form of listings that they end up listing, and they normally clean sales because properties do need to get sold and people want to move on, and that's a skill in itself. Handling a divorce sale, the ability to handle the husband and wife. But we're not going to go into that. This is not a training session. This is me reporting to you some of the things that are going to happen post COVID-19. But of course, agents will actually be listing a lot of these properties that come on the market. But, think about it. You're at home, you're beginning to reevaluate your life, and you're looking at what's good in your life and what's not so good. And then what actually happens is you've got financial pressures. These pressures sort of highlight some of the fractures and cracks that are in a relationship. Work can no longer be an escape. It can't be a band-aid to those issues. Hence, people go off and make the decision to separate. So that's what happened in Wuhan, and I'll be very surprised if that doesn't happen in most parts of the world. Of course, I'm going to break it up, and this rant tonight has been very much inspired by Bernard Saltz. He's a colleague of mine. I've worked with him both in speaking and at News Corp, and he wrote a wonderful article for The Australian, and he's a demographer. And a lot of the content I'm going to talk about today, he actually shaped my thinking, where I actually went off and thought, what's life going to be like post-COVID-19 for me? And I've got to tell you, I think it's going to be pretty good. And the reason I think it's going to be pretty good is that the work that I'm in, which is helping people that have got various problems in their business, predominantly real estate agents, is a path that I'm very familiar with, as probably the only person that is one of the prominent trainers in the business that's actually owned a real estate office and actually has worked through the 89 crash, the 92 recession, the 2008 GFC. I've walked through that path, and I sort of know the sort of qualities and skill sets that's needed, and I've already been hit up more than I ever expected in my online business. So it's going to be good, but it's also going to be good for other reasons, and that is one of my models, which was long overdue, was I wanted to reduce the amount of time that I was traveling. And what you'll notice is that I'll be able to produce more content and to more people using some of the new technology I'm currently implementing. And I'm in the stage where we're probably about a month away from pulling the trigger on that. But I'm sort of interested in looking at the various age groups of people that are going to be affected. And of course, when we go through and look at the various bands, you look at the age people, and the age people are the people that are 75 and over. And of course, for the age people, the number one concern for them with COVID-19 has been survival from a physical perspective. They have been the one group of people that have been concerned, hey, I hear if I get it, I could actually die. And I feel for these people. Because for them, they have not the fear of economic consequences, they have the fear of their life. And I've got a lot of sympathy for them. And I've also got a lot of sympathy for the people that are immunosuppressed, because they are also very concerned about the possibility of catching the virus, because for them it is life-threatening as well. But for most other people on the planet, let's be very clear, they're not concerned of dying. For most other people, they're not concerned of dying. And in fact, the world that I sort of work in, which seems to have a lot of commission-driven people, business-type people around, they've been far more interested in the economic consequences of the decisions that Australia and other countries have been taking. I've got to tell you, the reason I feel for the people that are 75 and over is that in their final stages of their lives, they of course have been impacted because their superannuation, which is highly linked to the share market, has been impacted. So I would suggest that they're going to be living their last few years on this planet with less money. I also presume that they're not going to be spending a lot of time cruising on ships like a lot of retirees do, and I don't expect a lot of these people, these aged people, to be having holidays in exotic places. You'll probably find that they'll probably get as exotic as going to places like Hervey Bay and places around Australia and coastal areas. So they'll be having local holidays because they're going to be concerned about travelling overseas, getting sick, and not having the Australian health system there. So let's move on and have a look at the next group of people, and that is the baby boomers. So I want to explain who the baby boomers are, because a lot of people are always confused about what age baby boomers end and what age baby boomers begin. So using the year 2020, this year, a baby boomer is between 58 years of age and 74, and they are known as the generation. Malcolm Quinn, by the way, hit up Malcolm Quinn. He's a great guy to follow. He owns one of the best offices in Queensland, Prime Agents, and he was kind enough to share how they do their curbside videos. It's in the real estate gym. So these people, these baby boomers that are 58 to 74 years of age this year, and they're also known as the My Time generation. I've got to tell you, these guys have been they've been the loudest age band. They've got a lot of strong views. And yes, correct, Peter, 1963. I think that's right, 1963. So they're age 58 now, or between 58 and 74. Now these guys here, they've had a good run. If you think about it, they've had a good run because they have come through an era where there's been prosperity. We've seen real estate values where a lot of these baby boomers have been really sort of just take off over the last 25 years. And they have benefited out of that. They got smashed a little bit during the GFC, maybe a little bit in the 1992 correction. But these guys here and these ladies have had the best of life: nice cars, nice property, capital gains. But now they've been smashed, and they've been smashed because they're going to find that, if you're on the younger side of a baby boomer, you're not going to be retiring anytime soon. You're going to be working longer. So your plan out of exiting out of the workforce is not going to be where you thought it was going to be. And I also feel sorry because these people's retirement has been shaped by 2 months, COVID-19, April and March. So their savings are going to be impacted. They also have this other issue, and that is that their children, many of their children are now going to be unemployed. Many of their children are going to have difficult, challenging lives. And what they're going to do is, instead of spending that money on that overseas holidays, they're going to go off and help their kids. And that means that their quality of their life, and they hustled pretty hard, but what it means for them is they've got to review where they're going to be holidaying. They'll be doing less traveling. Like the people that are over 74, they most likely will travel closer to home. And they're going to have to go off and help their families, their kids, because some of their kids are working as executives themselves in corporations. They may be made redundant, or they're going to be earning not the salary incomes that they were earning previously. And they are also going to have to work longer. So for the next decade, if they were planning to retire in their early 60s, that might end up becoming late 60s now. Then you move on to Generation X. Generation X, which is my generation, which is people that are aged between age 39 and 57, if we were looking at them today. And the people that are aged 39 to 57, well, I've got to say to you, for most of those people, they're living what I would suggest their hardest years. And the reason they're living their hardest years is they're bringing up teenagers, and they've normally got significant mortgages, and they're also in the stage where they're going to upgrade. And sometimes upgrading means that they're actually moving to a better home in a better suburb on a bigger block, which is a bigger house. Or other times they're going off and they're doing a $1 million renovation. And what this means for the Generation X is that their life and income will now be impacted, because I've got to tell you, corporate life and big bonuses, that's gone. It's all over Red Rover. The high salaries are not going to be there, and they're going to be challenging situations. And I believe that many of these people are going to make decisions to take their kids out of private schools. And whilst this sounds, gloomy for some people, I've got to tell you, it's bearable. It's bearable. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Sometimes, people look at these sorts of situations and say, that shit. Well, not really. In other countries, they would consider that, okay. I suppose what is actually happening is there is being a bit of a reset button in the way everyone sort of lives. And as John Manis says, they might have a weekend at Marrickville. They will be working long into their 60s. This group of people, this Generation X, the people, the category that I'm in, they're 39 to 57 years of age. And I do feel for these people, not because I'm in this group, because I do know that they're at a time where they're bringing up teenagers. They're normally got significant overheads, being private education or, of course, mortgages. And for these people here, their income is going to be impacted. So then we move on to the Millennials, Generation Y. These are the people that are aged 25 to 39 years of age. And I have to tell you, I feel sorry out of all the groups of people for this group the most. And the reason I feel sorry for this group the most is that they now are going to have to learn that they're going to have a job that they don't necessarily want, but they're going to take what they're given. And they're going to have to make the shift from entitlement to actually believe a decent job is a privilege. Stevie Georgiakis has just asked me, am I selling the Tesla? And the answer is no, I'm not selling the Tesla. And the reason I'm not selling the Tesla is I only buy things that I can afford, knowing that if things aren't great, I can still keep them. I buy cars cash, Steve. So entitlement is going to move to privilege. And we're going to see this group of people that are from 25 to 39 years of age, they're going to move into a challenging part of their life as well, because these people here are going to be moving into the family formation stage. And they're in for a bit of a shock, because they're going to end up working jobs that they don't necessarily love, but it's a job that they're going to need to do. Because when you've got a family and you've got a partner and you've got one or two children, you need to bring the money in. And for the Millennials, the Generation Y, it is going to mean that you're going to have to potentially trade avocado on wholemeal and be shopping at Fantastic Furniture and IKEA. That's, of course, if you're the average one. But I don't talk about average. And I'm talking about possibility. And I'm going to talk about that for a moment, because one of the things that's going to come out of post-COVID-19, if you're street smart, if you've got the hustle, if you can read the play, if you're creative, the world is your oyster. All of a sudden, we've got skill that will be noticed. All of a sudden, work is going to be your super weapon. And as Andrew says, will they buy suits at Lowe's? I think you'd get away these days with buying a nice pair of jeans, a t-shirt and a jacket. That outfit will cost you $250 and it will be better than Lowe's. So the millennials who have been brought up maybe not appreciating a job. And by the way, when I'm talking here, please understand, I don't want to get smashed by having people send emails, I'm 30 years of age and I work 70 hours a week. Well, be damn smart enough to know that this whole rant is basically generalization, right? We are talking about our level of averages, right? We're not sitting down and saying it's you, okay? Just have the IQ to work that out. Anyway, so that's the millennials. And then you've got what I call Generation Z. Generation Z. And these are the people that are aged between 4 and 18 years of age. And I've got two of those in my family. And what does it mean for them? Well, they've had a fast shift. Call it what you like. Maybe the buzzword that everyone has decided. No one had used the word pivot for like 50 years. And all of a sudden, everyone is using the word pivot. Isn't it funny how words become trendy? Pivot. I actually Googled the word pivot, and it actually doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Someone just Googled pivot. Why the hell's everyone using the word pivot all of a sudden? Buzzwords, trendy. Okay, so guys and girls, what's the other things that are going to come out of post-COVID-19? We're going to see the good and bad in people. And I've been, Paul Checker, a good friend of mine who's actually watching this rant on Instagram, shared a podcast where a guy by the name of Alain de Botton, I think I've said that wrong, but anyway, and I was listening to that podcast about 2-3 days ago, and like to me, what has COVID-19 showed? It has reminded us how fragile life is. It has reminded us, no matter whether you're Prince Charles, the closest person who would become a king, right? Or whether you're the Prime Minister of one of the largest countries in the world, the UK. Or whether you're Tom Hanks, the acclaimed actor. What it essentially means is whoever you are on the planet, it shows us the fragility and that life in itself is bigger than all of that. That life is bigger than any power. That life is bigger than any wealth. That life is bigger than any title. That life is bigger than anything. That no one is immune. And this is a reminder that hasn't happened just in 2020. Like if you look back over thousands of years, there have been major events that people have had no control over, that basically you've just sat there and watched with nothing you could do. And this has been a reminder of that. And it's also been able to deconstruct these social structures and power bases. And it is in fact equalizing the economics and wealth within the world. And Peter Hutton says, I think it shows how compliant we are, how we accept authority too easily. Absolutely. But I also think to myself that one of the reasons, like I've been agonizing over, why is it the USA is the country that's been devastated the most? Why is it the USA that has more resources, more power? I mean, this is the country of the world. Why is it that the USA, and in fact, New York, like New York, the best city of the best country in the world, gets smashed the most? Thousands of deaths in a day. Is it possible that there's a little bit of arrogance, that we're immune, we're different to the world? Is it possible that the president of the USA and his advisors are not as intelligent as what everyone thinks, and all they did was stop the border to Asia and not much else before it was too late? And as Conjo Jaka says, Kalamata, he says, it's the best city in the world. I'd be there in a few months' time if it wasn't for COVID-19. And Manos would have been in Crete. But is it possible also that Americans lack discipline? I mean, think about it. All you've got to do to go to America to see that they're a grossly overweight country. They're not so good on the willpower, right? They can sort of shut it all off, but their actual discipline is not great. Is it possible that all those factors together came along and it said, hey, don't get too smart. Science, right, ain't going to save you. There are certain things that ain't going to save you. And I think that's what Australia and New Zealand has done well. New Zealand's done it even more so because they're at day 16, off the top of my day 18 in lockdown. But there have been some bad things that have come out of this as well. Some terrible. Like, what the hell's this at Miranda's shopping centre? Go back to China and you go back to India. What a disgrace, Bali Bogan. What an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. So we're seeing a little bit of that. We're seeing a little bit of prejudice towards various, hey Bernard, various cultures. We're also, I believe, seeing there's a bit of discrimination in China itself, that people are being discriminated against those in Wuhan from those that are outside of Wuhan. And I would have thought to myself that when an event like this comes along and that you begin to realise that whether you're Prince Charles or Tom Hanks or Boris Johnson, that we're all equal and that we're all connected like neurons and that we impact everyone's life. And that has been proven with COVID-19, because those that did social distancing make life better economically and from a health perspective, better for others. Those that choose not to make it worse. So if you really think about it, we are connected, because I know 100 people who know 100 people who know 100 people who know 100 people who know 100 people. And let me tell you, being kind and generous and compassionate has an incredible exponential effect. May you all have a wonderful weekend. And I don't know about you, but I'm beginning to realize that sometimes we might overestimate how much happiness money actually gives us. Have a good Easter.